Welcome back to Space to Lead and our collaborative coaching series. This episode is part 2 of a conversation that Suzanne Fox and I started on trust. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that one, be sure and tune in. In that episode, we established that trust is evidence that people gather from how a system behaves. Today, we're picking up mid-conversation to apply that foundation to the 4 conditions of collaborative capacity: safety, clarity, alignment, and repair. We'll take a look at how each of these elements either strengthens or weakens the trust within your team and within the broader organizational system. Enjoy the conversation.
Welcome to Space to Lead, the podcast where leaders and teams come together to learn, grow, and thrive. Each episode brings fresh insights and real conversations with leaders and industry experts who are shaping the future of leadership. We explore strategies to build dynamic, engaging cultures, whether you're leading from the front or making an impact within your team. So take a deep breath, make some space, and let's lead together.
Rather than treating the model, while there is 4 conditions, let's maybe look at it, because we started talking about trust. Let's maybe look at how each element either strengthens or weakens trust. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Do you want to kick us off?
Oh, sure. So safety is like the first part of the model, the foundation of where collaboration starts and really depends on what's happening in the team. So we know if people cannot tell the truth, the group is going to make decisions with incomplete information, whether that information is good or bad. So people may know that a milestone is at risk, but stay quiet. And we actually have talked about this in a recent team you and I are working with, about them wanting those risks surfaced as early as possible so they can watch them and try and course correct them. And how do we build that in? There might be a flaw in a plan, but that person may assume it's not their place to challenge it. You might notice a stakeholder's been excluded. I've been guilty of that in my day. And worry about actually saying we're missing somebody sitting at the table with us because there might be criticism around that. And who needs help? Like, I really do think that this is something we struggle with just as humans, asking for help, and wait till it gets to a point where like we're drowning in something or things are unraveling, right? So without that safety, which is directly linked to trust, as we've talked about, and we've said people hold back, then the cost of holding back is relational on all levels. It affects quality, it affects risks, it affects speed of something, it affects the end results. Projects get delayed, the timelines get like years over or months over, budgets get impacted. There's real risk.
Yeah. And it really highlights why safety isn't an extra. It's not one of those soft things that we kind of make room for if there's time, because we know there's never going to be time. And the reality is that working in teams, working in organizations, it's complex, and no one can see the whole picture. And I loved how you highlighted with some of the examples there, the quality of the outcome, reaching the finish line, whether it's a project or a goal that we have for our team. It depends on whether people can actually contribute and feel comfortable to contribute. And that environment of safety, it creates the container for all of that dialogue and all of that discussion to happen, regardless of whether someone's right or wrong. So this doesn't mean that every idea gets accepted and we take it on. It's more that we've created conditions or a container for that environment to happen. And it's possible then for the group to kind of play and test ideas before they actually, as you said, put it into action to find out, is this going to work or not? I did say something there, though, when I talked about creating the conditions for safety. And I just wanted to build on that, because I've been in sessions where a facilitator or a coach will say, this is a safe space.
Right.
And you notice in what I just said there that they're naming the space as safe. In our role, in our coaching and in our consulting, we can certainly create the conditions for safety to happen. Yeah. But no one individual can create safety. This is something that's co-created, similar to trust. A whole bunch of things can be true at the same time. So in normal circumstances, maybe in our group, I feel comfortable, I feel safe working in this environment. Something else could happen externally, and tomorrow I could be feeling quite different. So safety is very fluid and it's co-created. I think it's really important that we name that.
Yeah, I totally agree, David. And I think it's like everything, right? Like, because everything we do is so complex, we really have to be aware of what's changes from day to day. I think one of the things that I know is important, safety includes being seen, heard, and understood in a sense of being included, feeling like I belong, and I'm going to add feeling like I matter.
Yeah.
So I did a post on this belonging versus mattering a little while ago. If anybody's interested, it's on my LinkedIn, and I got a ton of traction on it because of the difference between those two things. But it's not enough to just invite people into a room. They have to be. You have to use them for whatever they're bringing. You wanted them there for their expertise, their communication skills, their style, their organizational interests. They have to be taken seriously. A group can be very polite and still be unsafe. They can be friendly and still silence difference very quickly and easily. The question is whether people can bring what they genuinely see, know, and need into the work in a real room that sets the conditions for belonging, inclusivity, and mattering.
So true. So true. And I like in that last sentence how you tied it to the work. Because to your point, while safety and trust is important, it doesn't mean that we don't get things done.
That's right.
And in order to do that, the second condition, clarity. How can we rely on the environment, the structure around us? Sometimes folks separate clarity from trust. However, one of the fastest ways to destroy trust is to be ambiguous and not have clear understanding of where I'm going, what I'm working on. When our roles are unclear, people step on one another, or they leave gaps, or they make assumptions. When decisions are unclear, conversations repeat. I'm sure you've been in that wash, rinse, repeat, and you're like 6 months later, didn't we already talk about this? If our accountability isn't clear, people might make assumptions about who's avoiding responsibility, point fingers. Don't wait until something fails on a project before you decide who is actually responsible for it.
Right.
If we don't have clear communication pathways, people might feel excluded or blindsided. Tying back to what you just talked about, inclusion and belonging. If we don't have clarity about where we fit in, where I need to lean into things, and where maybe it's my responsibility to step back, that broken communication structure can have an impact on how we show up in that space. And probably most important, if our expectations aren't clear, it's not intentional, but we might inadvertently disappoint someone on the team without realizing that they're working from a completely different point of view.
Yeah, I always think about without those expectations of roles, responsibilities, that level of clarity, you could be stepping on people's toes and you don't even know it, right?
Yeah.
So the clarity that is important really creates predictability, and predictability helps people take appropriate levels of risk, right? I don't need to control every outcome, but I need to understand the process of who's participating and how we're doing there. Who owns the decision? Who do I have to consult? Who actually gets to decide? Does the team decide, or does the team make recommendations? Does it need to go up? Who am I sharing it with? I mean, there's so many questions to be asked in clarity. And without that, what do we do as human beings? We fill those gaps with stories and assumptions and judgments. And under pressure, those stories actually get bigger and bigger and much more generous.
Well, generous in that there's a lot of stories. However, I would add that they're rarely generous because those stories tend to have a bit of a negative lens to them. Oh, it's happening around me. No one's willing to decide. I'm being held accountable for something that I have no control over. Notice this trend of pointing the finger to someone else. They knew and they didn't tell me. I think sometimes we tend to go towards the negative, and often it's always someone else's fault and not my own. And unfortunately, in some cases, that interpretation might be true, not necessarily about the individual, but there's something going on in the system that has caused this narrative to happen. So, sometimes we talk about noise in the system, or there's a lot of confusion and mixed signals. And at the core of that, clarity. Yeah. And without that clarity, how are we going to trust one another?
Yeah, and thanks for catching my generous, right? Like generous meaning like it just gets so big and lofty, it's like just gets out of control, versus what you were referring to as we become less. So thank you for catching that. So the third one then is that alignment, right? Are we all generally pulling in the same direction? And alignment really is more than agreement with a broad vision statement. It means there's enough shared purpose, alignment of priorities, there's commitment to the collective outcome for people to actually make trade-offs together, because inevitably trade-offs will have to happen. The give and take, so to speak. This, I think, becomes really important across the things we've talked about in readiness: teams, projects, organizations, ecosystem. So two groups basically may both say they support the project while being measured, funded, or rewarded in ways that pull them in different directions. I don't know about you, but have you seen that? I'm rewarded for X, you're rewarded for Y, and they're in direct conflict of one another. You know, one partner may be optimized for speed, getting something done quick. Another one may be because they're going to make money and there's a cost to it. One of them might be accountable for the long-term risk.
Mm-hmm.
Other people may not be even thinking about that. Somebody might be protecting relationships or regulatory requirements. And those interests are not inherently wrong. The problem begins when they remain hidden and or so black or white that no one's performing or asking the right questions, and they're just in their silo, so to speak.
Yeah. You know, what's coming to mind for me is that term false harmony. So we're working on a project. We all sit around the table. Everyone nods, smiles. Yeah, everything's good. And then everyone goes to their respective corner and does their own thing. So suddenly you create this environment where what we thought we were working on, but what's actually happening are two very different things. And what does it do? It erodes trust. Yeah. So this is why there has to be an element of openness, of honesty, of real candor when it comes to what we're focused on, the constraints, what's non-negotiable. And it's important to note that, again, it doesn't mean that we all want the same things, but we need to understand where things overlap, where they differ, and how decisions will be made so that we ensure we achieve the desired goal or the outcome that we were working towards. And it also means that if there are differences, we need to give them enough airtime so that either it influences where we're going, or we've given it the airtime and then we can park it so that we can continue to move forward cohesively and aligned.
Yeah. And you know, I love the fact around like just that honesty and having candor. Like, some of the most important things are how we actually talk about collaboration in a space where I might have something that I need to put on the table so people understand my perspectives and where I'm coming from. So here's an example. Here's the pressure my organization is under, or my team is under, and here how that shapes my position in this particular thing that I'm involved in, project, etc. It's far more useful being open like that than pretending there's no tension and allowing it to surface later as resistance, delay, or surprise. Because I think that happens a lot, right? And if we don't get that alignment, there can be effort wasted and time wasted on many people's parts, because Suzanne hasn't said, I've got this pressure in my organization that actually means I can't move that widget, right? And so people can work very hard, but be working very hard at cross purposes if we don't declare the tensions that we carry.
Yeah, so true. And the reality is, we know that often it doesn't happen. You and I work in many systems where there is a lack of either safety, clarity, or alignment. Sometimes one, sometimes all three. Yeah. So inevitably, we will get to spaces where there is some repair work required. You know, it's just a reality. Every system, every team, every project experiences some kind of strain. Someone could miss a commitment. We may make a decision thinking it's the right decision, and then there's a ripple effect of something unintended happening. Information may arrive late. Someone may have an off day and have a conversation that doesn't go so well. We might inadvertently exclude someone, not realizing that they're an important part of the work that we're doing. Someone can become defensive. I mean, I could go on. There's lists of these things, right? Yeah. Fact that there's tension doesn't mean that collaboration has failed. In fact, if there's no tension, I tend to be a little suspicious. Yeah. The most important thing, though, is have we built a solid foundation? as we think about this collaborative coaching and the work that we're doing, that the system can recognize something's happened, there's been a rupture, and work through it as opposed to get stuck.
David, it's really, and I want to just pull us back to trust for a sec, because strong trust is not the absence of these cracks or these things that we encounter that maybe the unintended consequences, you said, right? Strong trust is actually the confidence that the cracks can be addressed before they become real breaks and real ruptures. So repair means naming what's happened early, being willing to have the difficult conversation I'm not used to having and I'm so uncomfortable. It might be listening for impact, not just defending the intent. I mean, we all do that as leaders. Well, my intention is this, yeah, but the impact was this, right? So how do we surface that, and responsibility for what is actually ours and not point the finger, as you said earlier. So it means learning so the same patterns that we have are less likely to keep reoccurring.
Yes, which is why we didn't call this fourth condition Band-Aids. Because it's, again, if a team doesn't create the space to understand what happened, to name it, and also talk through what does this look like going forward? If there was a breakdown between two partners, what is the behavior we're looking for so that we're actively impacting and changing the system, not just glossing it over so we can move forward.
Yeah, I'm just going to use you and I as an example, David. Like, we've had to practice this in our own collaboration, right? Like, with our facilitations together and us learning to work together, we're not delivering two separate monologues. We're weaving the work together that we have in real time. One of us may see something in the room that the other's not yet noticed. Right? One of us may change direction because the group needs something different from what we planned, which we experienced a couple of weeks ago. And we keep handing the conversation back and forth to add to our thinking together and sometimes interrupt the sequence of what we thought was going to move forward to serve the room. And that actually
we often talk about it being a tennis match.
Yeah, the back and forth, right? I'm lobbying the ball to you now. Okay, you've got it. And that really requires a level of trust. But the trust is not that we will coordinate perfectly and not surprise one another. We've both been surprised. The trust is that we're working toward the same outcome, right? That you and I can speak honestly afterward and we've debriefed. What can we repair quickly if it's a repair? Or how do we say, hey, I saw this pattern in the last couple sessions. Tell me about that. How do I support that? Or how do we change the pattern? Right? Because there could be an unintended impact. So yeah, I just was giggling as we're talking, right? Like, you and I are doing this also in real time.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about perfection, because sometimes as leaders, as project managers, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And if I think about you and I working together, if I had to be worried about perfection, I would be terrified every time that we're in the room together with a team, because I'd be worried about taking the wrong step. I'd probably be too tentative and cautious in how I approached our work. But the fact that we make repair part of the dynamics of how we work together, it actually, to your point, enables us to be super adaptable and flex and move with what's happening in the space. So I love that. Thank you for that. So, gosh, we've been chatting for a while about this. Probably useful if we bring all of this together just to sort of sum up what we've been chatting about today. So imagine, and we don't have to imagine because we do this every day, but imagine for our listeners that you're working with a cross-organizational project and there's a key milestone that's at risk. If safety is weak, our concerns might be softened or withheld. We might not fully surface what's going on because we're afraid of speaking it out loud. If clarity is weak, no one may know who can change the plan, who can make the decision. What do we do with this information? If alignment's weak, every player, every team in the project might protect their own goals, their own targets, and shift the risk to someone else. Oh, that was Suzanne. Yeah, I wondered what she was doing. Just even some quiet words we can say can shift the blame somewhere else in the system. And if repair is weak, the eventual miss, what we've been ignoring, avoiding, pointing fingers at, needs somewhere to land. So it's not about the outcome. It's about who did what.
And just to flip that, David, just imagine if the same issue and in those 4 components, it was super strong from a collaborative capacity perspective. Someone raises a concern, they do it early because it's safe to do so. It means you eliminate some risks. The group knows who owns the decision and who needs to contribute. So they know who they're going to for what. They also know what decisions they can make individually. the different interests and pressures are put on the table and those trade-offs are started and they're made consciously versus not naming what I said earlier, those tensions that we hold in, if it's different organizations, different teams. If commitments are missed and there's impacts, how does the group address it and adjust and be agile in that? That is collaborative capacity in action. It's not the absence of problems, not the absence of risks, but it's the ability to work with those problems before they overwhelm the relationship or the result of the thing, the project.
Yeah. And I noticed in your description, when the first three are strong, you had no need for risk. Repair.
Repair, yeah.
Yeah, the risk was gone, so we didn't need to repair anything because each of those was so strong. Beautiful. Yeah. So as we start bringing our conversation to a close, let's go back to the 5 levels of collaborative readiness, because trust has a different expression at each of those levels. At the individual level, readiness includes self-awareness, openness, curiosity, active listening, and the ability to regulate ourselves under pressure. At the team level, it's those same things, but it's more of a shared pattern. Do people speak directly to one another or about one another? Can the team disagree without fragmenting? Do members follow through, or do they flag concerns before a commitment is missed? Are mistakes examined for learning or used as evidence against someone? So you can start to see the same patterns at the individual, but on an expanded scope. At the project or initiative level, again, the same behaviors, but now trust needs to cross boundaries. Different disciplines, different departments, organizations, contractors, all those accountabilities come together temporarily to deliver something none of them can deliver alone. At the organizational level, people are watching how the system behaves and whether it matches its stated values. Does the organization say collaboration matters, but at the same time rewards individual competition? Does it ask for innovation while punishing failure? Those are just a few of the questions we can ask to understand how things are behaving at the organizational level. And finally, at the systemic level, trust is shaped by history, power, reciprocity, and whether commitments have been honored over time. This is particularly important when organizations are working with communities, governments, community interest groups, indigenous groups, regulators, contractors, or long-term partners, because trust cannot simply be requested. It's something that has to be demonstrated and earned.
Yeah, so David, trust is not only an interpersonal quality. It's also a property of the system people have to work inside and being asked, right? So if it's low, we need to diagnose it at the right level. The communication workshop will not fix unclear governance. And I think we do that often. The team building event will not align competing incentives. A request to assume positive intent will not repair repeated harm or broken commitments and not addressing or surfacing those repeated patterns. The intervention has to match the level and the condition. And man, oh man, is that what collaborative coaching does?
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I know you've experienced this as well. So many times I've been called by some HR leader, we're having a problem with the team. We want you to come in and do a workshop.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's not quite how it works with trust. Trust is something that's built over time with all those examples that you talked about. And I like that you tied it into collaborative coaching, because trust, we often describe it as the glue of collaboration. But it's even more than that. It affects how early risks are surfaced, how quickly decisions can be made, how honestly people can discuss trade-offs and sort of negotiate and influence the system. It influences how much energy is spent on protection rather than progress. We talked a lot about that. And whether a setback becomes learning or blame.
Okay, so let's just bring this home. When safety, clarity, and alignment repair are strong, collaboration becomes more than a good intention. It actually becomes a capacity the system can rely on. That's what I'm hearing in all this, and that's what I'm feeling and seeing in the work you and I are doing. That's what leads to better decisions, better relationships, faster execution, lower risk, greater value, more sustainable results. And it's not because those things disappear like conflict and everyone thinks alike, and it's not because trust is declared, but it's the conditions that you've articulated repeatedly show people that they can do that. They can tell the truth, understand how the work operates, and pull toward a shared outcome and recover when things go wrong.
Love that. Love that. So here's an invitation for our listener. Think about a a team that you're working with, a project that you're on, and think about a collaboration that really matters to you. And here's a few questions that you can ask yourself just to sort of see if you can start peeling back the layers to what may or may not be going on in that dynamic. When are people holding back? Where are they getting stuck? Are there times when priorities are pulling apart? Is there something that has not yet been repaired? And that's an important question, because sometimes that repair is nothing to do with the current project, but very much to do with something that happened years ago, because we know that organizations can have a long memory. And then as you think about those questions and your responses, at what level does the issue live? Is it individual, team, project, organization, system? Is it one of those or a combination of those?
Ugh. Got goosebumps thinking about that. So good, David. And the diagnosis gives you somewhere concrete to begin, actually, right? Like we often struggle of, I don't know where to start. I don't know where the issue is. It actually takes leaders that, want to pause and really ask themselves those hard questions that you just gave our listeners to think about. Strengthen one of those conditions and you often influence the others. That's the beauty thing about this, right? Improve clarity, and probably people are going to feel a lot safer to act because they're going to know the box, so to speak, that they're in, what roles they have, what responsibilities. Create safety, and misalignment can finally be discussed and surfaced. Repair a rupture, and the group may be able to rebuild accountability because you're looking at it from a system lens. These conditions operate together. They're never alone. If we neglect one, the whole collaboration may be at risk.
So true, so true. And I think it's important to end with this idea that, as you said, anything can be repaired, but it doesn't require perfection. No. Trust, just like relationships, is something that's fluid. It's constantly moving. I loved how you talked about when we work over here, it can strengthen the whole system. We often talk about the ripple effect that happens, but that ripple effect also creates other changes. As I strengthen this relationship over here, this relationship might feel a little bit threatened. So this isn't something that it's a one and done. It's something that we constantly need to pay attention to. The key is it requires enough safety to tell the truth, enough clarity to act, enough alignment to pull in the same direction, and enough repair to recover when we're not able to do those three things. This is how readiness becomes capacity, and capacity builds results. Thank you, everyone. Well, first, thank you, Suzanne. I always love these conversations that we have. And thank you to all of our listeners. Look for us in our next episode on the Collaborative Coaching Series.
As Suzanne and I have talked about today, trust is the glue of collaboration, but it's also a property of the system itself. We invite you to reflect on your own teams. Where are people holding back? Where are priorities falling apart? And is there something that has not yet been repaired? Remember, trust doesn't require perfection. It requires the capacity to tell the truth, act with clarity, and the ability to recover when things go wrong. Thank you for joining myself and Suzanne on this episode. We look forward to you in the next episode of our Collaborative Coaching Series.